Today, Joe Rogan mocks Neil Young embarrassing return
All
to
right, so it looks like
Spotify.
Neil Young is done with his Spotify protest, and he went crawling back and put all his music back up on the platform. Only a couple of years after he pulled it all because he felt like Rogan was spreading COVID misinformation. And originally, Neil
I
Young
mean, he kind of did, right?
said he's never going back, no chance, he's done with the platform. But of course, to no one's surprise, really, he ended up bringing his music back to Spotify. Even though originally he said he didn't care about the money, he didn't care if other musicians followed
Yeah,
him,
so until you don't have any
him.
money.
He didn't care if his fans had to listen to his music somewhere else. He said there's enough other places to listen to it. You know, he claimed he was doing this for the right reasons. He just wouldn't feel comfortable leaving his music up there. And he even did this interview on Howard Stern where he talked about it a little bit. And of course, this did not age very well at all. And it's just so cringy to look back at, especially how much Howard is praising him and acting like what he did is so commendable. But of course, most people
And by signaling a
at the
day.
time realized what Neil was doing is just pure virtue signaling. Like, look at me, I'm doing the right thing. And now, a couple years later, it's pretty clear that's what was going on. And also during this interview, it's so funny. They're refusing to say Joe's name. Like, they don't want to give him the attention, which is just so stupid because Joe's podcast is 1,000
Yeah,
times
he's the most famous
more popular than the
podcaster.
Stern show. And also, it sounded like Neil didn't even know what he was talking about. Like, some people were just telling him this stuff, or he's just reading headlines or something. Because he's just like, I heard about doctors spreading misinformation and, you know, people are dying in hospitals and this is real stuff and there's a podcast. And, you know, like, I doubt he actually listened to Joe's podcast at all and came to this conclusion. Like, he just had people tell him this. And then he even said it. He didn't really think
I mean, what people tell him is most important. It's a rumor.
about it. He's just like, all right, I'm taking all my music off. I don't care. I don't care if I lose money.
I'm not sure about his tag from too
I'm just
lazy.
doing the right thing.
And they were saying something about COVID and how many people were dying in the hospitals and
You should probably get the facts right though.
misinformation, and you see all the nurses and everything, and these people are with these people who are dying. I mean, this is their life. They're that's what they do. They try to save people. So these people were distressed by the fact that Spotify was doing this misinformation with some show they, and I listened to it, and I did, and they were saying he purposely is saying this stuff that he knows isn't true about COVID, and people are dying, and
Yeah.
I just called up my management and said, we're out of there, get me off,
Wow.
and we'll be fine. They were a little shocky because
Why is he getting off though?
they all know the numbers and everything, but I,
Getting out of Spotify?
who cares? Who cares?
Well, apparently he cares because it's back
Yeah,
up
he respect them.
there. You know, it obviously meant something to him. And of course, he acts like it's not about the money. He doesn't care about that, but obviously it is. Like, he said that his return to Spotify does not reflect a reversal on his stance against Rogan, but Spotify represented 60% of his streaming revenue globally, leading to
Yeah,
a
it's not all this information he's talking about,
huge
man.
loss for his record
He talk about other things too, so
company. But also, of course, he's acting like he's doing it for the fans. That's why he brought it back. You know, he mentioned how Rogan's podcast is on all the platforms now, and he said, because I cannot leave all the services like I did Spotify, because my music would have no streaming outlet to music lovers at all.
this guy obeys me, so I'm leaving from the internet. That's just stupid. What?
Turned, which I didn't expect him to leave all the platforms. I understand that, but it doesn't really make sense to be like, since I can't leave all the platforms, then I'm going to end the protest and go back to the one that I had a problem with. And also, Spotify, they're still the ones
Yeah, that literally doesn't make sense at
did
all.
the deal with Rogan. You know, he's signed to their company still, even though he's on all the platforms. Like, they're still the ones that are paying him. So it's just pretty obvious. Neil caved, and he's like, all right, it's not worth it. You know, I'm missing out on too much money here. The protest was stupid. I'm going to come back, even though he'll never admit that. But it's just funny hearing him talk about it at the time because it sounds like he's completely done. He doesn't care how much money he'll lose. He doesn't care what people think. It's his decision, and he's sticking with it. But of course, Howard's buying all this bullshit, and he's like, "Oh, you are so brave for doing this."
I don't.
Neil, that is such integrity. What is the calculation? How much money did you turn down?
What is this praising, bro? It's just kind of cringe.
Millions of dollars.
I don't know.
You didn't care. You didn't care.
I don't. Yeah, I knew I was going to do fine.
Were you
Oh,
shocked
he knew the exact number, bro.
that more musicians, not that they didn't agree with you, but they didn't step up and join your boycott?
No, I wasn't surprised because a lot of people don't look at it like I look at it, and their point of view is different about it. I don't know why, but the way I look at
This ego is too strong
it,
for
that
this.
just turned me off, and I made an instant decision. I didn't think about it at all. I said, just take my music off. We don't need it. I've got all these other places, and it sounds better at the other places. What?
But wasn't it more than that, Neil? Wasn't it the idea that, hey, you can either have Neil Young or you can have fake information going out about the vaccine? That's the way you
Well,
put it.
I told them, I said, you can have that guy or you can have me. Take your choice. So they chose to have that guy because they're making millions of dollars.
Yeah, I don't think he's that relevant, bro.
Off of him and paying him. They've just given him a whole bunch
I've
of
never heard of him until now.
money and the whole thing, and that I would just eventually roll over and be back.
And you haven't been.
I'm never going back there or anywhere else like it. I don't want to.
Yeah, so it's crazy after saying all this, you'd have the audacity to return a couple of years later. I mean, it's just embarrassing. And Spotify, they play this well. Neil's like, they expect me to just roll over and come back to their platform. Well, that's what you did. I mean, I feel like once Neil decided to remove his music and protest Spotify and try to make a statement and go on the Stern Show to talk about how you're never returning and it's either me or Rogan, I feel like after all that, you'd be like, okay, there's never going back on this. It'd just be too embarrassing. But I guess Neil didn't care because money talks at the end of the day. And it's just hilarious that Spotify chose Joe over Neil, and Neil even admits that. Yet he'll still go crawling back to them. And the people at Spotify are probably just like, well,
Yeah, of course he's making the most money, so
that worked out well. Now we have both of them again. So Rogan actually mentioned Neil returning on one of his most recent podcasts, and here's what he had to say about it.
Neil Young came back to Spotify. Congratulations, Neil.
Yeah, well, that's good news.
And his excuse was, he said that because all of the platforms are now allowing my disinformation, so that he'll just go back on Spotify too.
Oh, yeah.
Great to know you've got some ethics.
Yeah, well, everybody's doing it these days, disinformation. But yeah, I mean,
so obviously Rogan loves it. And
I
thinks
guess it's like not taking the gambling sponsorship for the smaller creator.
Hilarious, because it is hilarious.
And if you have ethics, and there you go.
And if you remember, he responded.
You can go ahead and do it, but
once Neil left the platform, he made that video addressing it, and he was actually really generous. He was like, "Yeah, I love Neil. I love his music."
if you're in like a financial situation, then you should probably take the sponsorship.
I have no problem with him. I'm not mad at the guy. If he wants to do that, it's fine. But of course, Neil, on the other hand, he won't even mention Joe's name, and he acts like he doesn't even know who he is, like he's just some random guy on Spotify or something. But I don't even think he knows what the hell's going on. But whatever, he did nothing with this protest. He just made himself look like an idiot. It didn't accomplish anything. So that's about it for this video. But make sure you guys go check out my Patreon account. I'm about to post a big video on there tomorrow about a few different things. But I think there might be some problems going on with Andrew Santino and Bobby Lee. And Bobby recently addressed Red Bar, which was shocking. So there's a ton of stuff on Patreon. Over 7
Nice, more drama. That's nice.